So the question is really, how do you allow your tragedies to become possibilities in your life, but at the same time, not allow your tragedies to define you? I mean, my laundry list of tragedies is pretty long, but one that strikes home for me right now, especially since I just had a kid, is that 13 years ago, my daughter died of sudden infant death syndrome. I went ahead and picked up a bunch of heroin after that, because I guess that's what you do when your baby dies. But the truth is that it broke me inside, and I think I was terrified to ever love again to that level. I'm sure you can relate, because love is scary in and of itself, but losing a kid is kind of intense. You know, you think that losing a kid would be the thing that would like wake you up to wake the fuck up and live a life beyond your wildest dreams. You think it would do that. But for me, I couldn't even see it then. It took years and years of pain and agony over that loss before I had the willingness to even move a finger. And when I did move that finger, everything changed. You know, I became courageous in a way I never had. I overcame heroin addiction and became clean. And I created a career beyond my wildest dreams. And in doing that, I opened up myself to realize that I could love again like that and make a new baby. And, you know, this month, I celebrate the 5-month birthday of my daughter, my current daughter. Her name is Cash. And my book coming out. And to be able to have that much birth after creating or living through that much death, I think that's what makes humans so beautiful. The point of it all is to say, how can I use exactly what is happening and exactly what has been given to me to become not just the greatest version of ourselves, because that's fucking awesome and great, but to also be willing to go to any lengths to find bliss every day. Your story does not need to be like mine. You do not need to have lost a daughter to become the best version of yourself. Whatever thing you are going through in your life, keep pushing through. And don't just keep pushing through, transform that shit. Make it your bitch. And then see what you're capable of.
Biet, thank you so much for telling your story and for your incredible courage. I know we just met like about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit less, at a party on the Venice canals. And I remember I was going through kind of a tough time that day. And we started talking and connecting. And you just like were so kind and patient and gentle, I remember, in our conversation. And you led me through a breathing exercise. Yeah, and it was really soothing and valuable for me. So you made quite the first impression on me, and I didn't even know your full backstory then. And I'm just so inspired by who you be and what you give. And you're just so inspiring from your story, from you're uberly talented as well as a musician and as a healer and as an intuitive and as a teacher. And just thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, so you have a new book coming out that I want to get into in a little bit, but I first want to ask you some other questions first. So one question that just kind of goes back to your story, what continued to give you hope even in those moments of darkness?
You know, the beautiful thing about hopelessness, of which I've experienced so much of in my life, is that nothing could give me hope in the moments of hopelessness. And I'm thankful for that, because there's such a complete darkness to darkness in my life that it was like, in those moments, it was like I was completely uncertain that anything mattered or anything made sense. You know what I mean? And it hurt so much. And I'm so grateful for that level of lostness or that level of pain. That I was brave enough, I think, in a way, it is kind of a bravery. And then also broken enough, that I was broken enough to be able to go to such depths of despair. But what I found was on the other side of those deep darknesses was that sunlight of hope, like it would come rising up. And then really it's so funny because the sun is always there, just like when the clouds come over. I'm sure you've heard that before. But it's like, hope is a ridiculous notion because nothing is wrong. hope is like this idea, well, it'll get better later. It's like, it's not wrong now. You're just asleep to the fact that it's fine. You're asleep to the fact that it's incredible. You're asleep to who you truly are. And I was. And I think that hope, when it came back after those darknesses, it reminded me of the whole truth. So it wasn't like I was like, maybe one day I'll be incredible. I think that when the hope comes in, it's like, you're incredible. And you just need to wake up and like put one foot in front of the other and stop bitching, And then I would do that. And then one foot. And then you do get to this, new place. It just takes follow through,
Did you have a vision at the time, like a long-term vision that you could kind of continue to aim and take step towards?
When I was like,
when you were
lost?
Yeah.
Not clearly. I mean, I think that the gift of becoming sober and like becoming a woman of my own destiny, or the creation of my own destiny, led to me having to form a very clear vision. But prior to that, it was pretty murky. It was just like, I want world fame. I want lots and lots of money. I want an incredible partner who's really hot and loves me. Like, what the fuck does everybody want?
Right.
And I wanted all those things. And I wanted to be enlightened and not care about all those things too. I wanted all these. It was just like the laundry list of contradicting desires were pretty present.
Sure. Well, I mean, it sounds, and being familiar with your story, having lost your mom at a young age and your dad being a shaman. So you were exposed to some of these, enlightened teachings at a young age.
Yes.
And at the same time, darkness, and faced a lot of loss as well. So I can just imagine, on one hand, you have all these tools, you have a lot of the knowledge of tapping into your spirituality, but at the same time, you're a human, and humans suffer. So I wanted to just ask you about that, and then I have a follow-up question to that as well.
What's the question?
So the follow-up question, I guess, would be in regards to the concept of authenticity. Yeah. Because this show is all about being real. It's all about being authentic, which from doing over 200 episodes, I found it's such an abstract concept that's so deeply personal. And so I'm kind of curious to your take as to your authentic journey, or what authenticity means to you, taking into account the light, the dark, and just suffering being a part of the human experience. Right. How does that play into this concept of authenticity?
I think that my whole life, I used my suffering as a weapon against myself. And there was nothing authentic about that. It was an inauthentic use of suffering. I do believe that authenticity started for me the day that I admitted that my real suffering was a gift, and that I was going to stop bitching about that, but that my fake suffering needed to be shown to the world. And by fake suffering, I mean, like, there's real suffering. My mother died. That's really, really painful. But then, like, the fact that I'm vain, or the fact that I'm insecure, or that I, have had body dysmorphia, or that I'm, selfish or self-centered or jealous of other women, or like dumb shit, I'm not saying that you're dumb if you're listening to this and you're like, but I'm jealous of other women. It's like, no, I just mean that's not fucking real suffering, okay? Like, thinking that someone else might be better than you isn't real. And so I started to take all the things that I thought I was going to take to my grave, like secrets, like the fact that I was jealous of other people, or the fact that I was super fucking self-absorbed, or whatever. And I started bringing that to the world. And I found that in my conversations with friends like you, like when we would talk, instead of trying to make myself look good all the time, I actually went the opposite route and was like, let's just look how I look. And whatever the fuck that is that day is what it is. And the rest, it's like amazing when you unearth that stuff. Like just last year, I was thinking about having a baby, right? But I'm not like let's try to have a baby. I was just like, let's have a baby in a few months. Like, let's get pregnant. And in the midst of that, like, I realized, like, I just came from like, we'll get to this later, I think, but I just came from complete poverty recently, right? So I went from that to being rich, but like, I'm not Oprah levels of rich yet, right?
What?
So yeah, I know. What? And so I was at this party and this guy was like talking to me and he was like, so what's like, what's been on your mind lately? And I was like, well, the truth is that I'm having a really hard time with the concept of getting pregnant because I don't think it's right for a person to have a baby unless they're Oprah levels of famous and successful. That was a belief I held, like a real belief. And it didn't it wasn't about, we weren't like even having sex to try to make a baby. We were just talking about it, right? Yeah. But like in the back of my mind, like I just was so sad for this baby that was going to come into the world without like an Oprah levels of successful mom. Yeah. And I was like, this is some bullshit. And I said it to this guy and he like kind of felt sorry for me, whatever. And he kind of judged me, which that's what you're going to get when you're being authentic. Yeah. And he also tried to convince me otherwise, which I thought was so funny because I was talking about some subconscious shit. He was like, no, it's not like that, But it was in that moment of saying it out loud, it was like it killed it somehow. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? No, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe I just get to go have a kid and then the Oprah levels of success shit will like come out of that or post that. And I got to fucking trust that. And I got to be courageous and like jump and just see what happens.
I totally agree with that. And while the story that I tell myself about having a kid, because it's definitely something that I want to do, it's not necessarily that I need to be Oprah level rich, but there's like this chicken and the egg kind of thing where it's like, and I also, it's not, I don't even think limited to having a kid. It could be in regards to, meeting someone as well, or making any kind of change in your life for that matter, like waiting for the right time or waiting for the circumstances to align just right. I think it's like a chicken and the egg kind of thing. Right. Do I need, to hit my business goals? Is that necessary in order to call in this future mother to my children? Or could I meet this amazing woman first, start building a life together, which then might inspire me to create the, business results that I'm seeking? So I think it's like, chicken and the egg kind of thing. And I don't think there's like a right and wrong in there as well.
Well, it's whatever's given, right? So had I been struck Oprah levels of successful at that moment, I would have been fine with that. Thank you, whoever's listening. But like that did not happen. And so at that moment, I realized that I was going to tap into courage instead. Yeah. And also, I think we all know the future. And I heard a whisper and it was like, just go forward. And then exactly what I thought was going to happen happened. It was like she was born and I felt like I was like jet rocketed to the next dimension of my career. And I like doubled my income, like crazy shit.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Like what changed in you becoming a mother? Whether it was something like completely internal or just the way you spend your time, or I'll let you put words on it.
I just believe that she has a certain right to certain things and a certain level of care. And I also believed in time. And as a mom who's releasing a book in 2 weeks, like I'm not able to like just give up everything and like just breastfeed her 24 hours a day forever. I did that for 2 months straight. But then after that, I was like, okay, I got to go like release this book, So what are we going to do, babe? And I talked to her and she said to me in telekinesis, because she doesn't fucking speak. And she was just like, I want you to be, the Patti Smith of moms. Like, I don't want you to be some fucking woman who gives up her life for me. I want you to go be incredible. So show me how incredible you're capable of being. Cause and I almost like felt like I was doing it to inspire her. Like I was like, let's see if she's my audience, like what could I do to be inspiring to her?
That is so beautiful. I love that you let yourself go to that place to have that energetic conversation with her, whether, she was actually conveying that in words or not, which was not, because she's just a little baby. I know you also have kind of a daily ritual of honoring your higher self. So I would love if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, it's so much more than daily, right? It's like, I feel like the way that I honor my higher self, as you're calling it, is to be always connected to both, right? Because like, I think that the way I honor the divine today is by being present to and getting into and turning towards my suffering and my pain and my current level of being, right? So no matter who's listening to this right now, like, you know for sure that there's a distance between where you currently are and where it is you'd like to be in certain domains of your life, right? And so the woo-woo, Biet spiritual, like all is good person in me wants to deny that, wants to be like, no, I'm at a 10, like everything's amazing. I'm just in a state of gratitude. I just wrote a gratitude list. I just meditated for half an hour. I'm perfect, right? But I was hiding behind my perfectionism. And I think that actually the way that I connect with the divine today is by feeling that burn of that distance between where it is I am now and where I'm going, and letting that burn be okay. Like because it's never going to go away, as you know, like as you grow in your career and in your wealth and in your whatever prestige, like there will always be, like, I used to say that I'm so jealous of Christopher Walken. He's like one of my heroes. And one of my mentors, like 5, maybe 7 years ago, was like, everyone has a Christopher Walken. Like, even Christopher Walken has a Christopher Walken. And I was like, like my brain exploded. I was like, how could Christopher Walken have a Christopher Walken? Like, it doesn't get any better than that.
So you have a new book coming out.
I do.
Don't Just Sit There.
Don't Just Sit There.
And, I think it's, I haven't read the book yet, but I'm very excited to, because I've been someone who has been meditating for several years. And sometimes I ask myself the question, like, is this even working? Or, how am I applying these lessons and the space that I'm creating while meditating in my life? And I know, since you could do a much better job describing Don't Just Sit There than me, tell us a little bit about the book.
Sure. Well, Don't Just Sit There is the title. And I think that the reason is because meditation, and the way that I'm bringing it to the world, and it's through a fourth way lens, which is an ancient technique that has not been, diffused in our current time. So I feel very honored to be diffusing it into the world. This method, it has laws inside of it. And that's actually the structure of the book. It's these 44 laws that prevent us from enlightenment, and how to be aware of them, and then how to live above the law, ostensibly.
Nice.
And so then don't just sit there. The idea is, how do you meditate in a world where you have desire? How do you meditate in a world where you have to go do a bunch of things, right? Like, you're doing a bunch of things. And everyone's like, I think it can be really confusing. Like, there's these principles of like, well, should I give up my belongings? Should I give up my desire? Should I shave my head? Like, what is this lust inside of me? What is this greed inside of me? What is this? And then we push it down because we've been taught that spirituality is meant to be this thing that's like desireless and like, neutral at all times. And that's not really the way it looks, right? Yes, bliss does look like that, but you would need some tools to get to a state of bliss. And these are the tools. Like, I didn't do anything new, so to speak, in the sense that Lao Tzu pretty much handled it, right? Like, I think it was already done at that point. I was like, why did anyone even write a book after this? Like, this is pretty much it. The Tao Te Ching, like, kind of good. I'm good. Like, right? It kind of wraps it up all in a perfect bow. But the truth is that it's like romance. It's like sex, right? It's like every era needs its own lover. And I believe that we need an orator. We need a messenger of these principles. We need a messenger of this, how to do it. Because as you fall in love with this book, you get inspired to go do these things, right? We can't always go back to these like ancient times. Like, everyone, I think a lot of people are actually yearning for the secrets of the Bible, and it's like, well, we need someone then to explain where the secret is hidden inside that book.
With real modern stories that we can really relate to. Yeah,
exactly. And the beautiful thing about the Bible is that it's like, those Matrushka dolls, like where it's like a big fat thing and then you open. Many layers, right? So, but most people just see the big fat layer of the Bible. They're like, Jesus died on a cross. Like, it's that fucking simple. And the cool thing is that it works on that level. Like, apparently, because lots of people are like, Jesus died on a cross, and they're like really into that story. But then if you just go in and in, and in, there's like, in there is that tiny little Matrushka doll. And some of us are looking for that. And this book helps you get there. That's the difference.
That is so cool. I can't wait to read it. I think it sounds absolutely awesome. And as you're saying all these things, it continues to baffle me as to why these lessons aren't taught in school. It baffles me. So thank you for bringing the awareness and telling your stories and your client stories, I would imagine,
Yes.
In the book. I have one more question before we get into some more colorful questions, but you taught me an amazing breathing exercise, which was really valuable for me in that moment because I was feeling a moment of stress or discomfort, dis-ease, and you gave me a little breathing exercise. So I wanted to see if you had a breathing exercise that you could share with everyone listening today.
Yeah. Just anyone at all?
Yeah, I guess, one that...
I think it's really nice to just do like Kapalabhati sometimes.
Okay.
Like there's the big one with the, right? But that's really intense to do in a public place. I have found that it's easier to, and no one will notice if you're doing Kapalabhati in like through the nose. And so you could just, kind of puff out of your nose very simply like this. What is it? And you're pumping your tummy, right? Right? And then at the end, what's the most important piece is I would do that for about 30 seconds at least. And then inhale deeply through the nose and hold. And then kind of just arch your spine and come out and release. It's just a nice one. That's a really good one to do.
That felt really liberating.
Just
I
a
felt
little
like I
bit.
really let go of some weight there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That was really nice.
Thanks.
Cool. You're very intuitive, and I wanted to ask you what you feel your intuitive gift is.
My intuitive gift is that I'm not a victim of time. I don't believe time is real. And so I've been able to time travel in my life. I've been able to communicate with future selves of mine, me in the future. And I feel like she whispers in my ear and tells me what's going to happen. There's a lot of fakes in our lives. So really the biggest gift I have is being able to discern the difference between the fakes and the real me who's coming back and being like, this is what's gonna motherfucking happen. And she's never wrong, So that's one.
That's awesome. Cool. This is just a question out of curiosity because I know that you've persevered through addiction in your life, and you mentioned earlier about heroin, and I know I've read about cocaine, so I'm kind of curious to know your take on drugs.
Yeah. I think they're awesome. I loved drugs while I was doing them. I just know for sure that drugs are a lie in the sense that they, and why do I say they're awesome, but they're a lie? Like, okay, yeah, if you want to feel enlightened right now, like you can go, do some ecstasy. You will know what enlightenment is, like for 4 hours. And then after the 4 hours are over, you will feel enlightenment literally leaving your body. And no matter how fucking awake you are or woke you are, you will not be able to hold that state. The truth is that drugs are a state change, right? So they take you from one state to the other. It's like you're hopping states. But actual work, like the work that it takes to feel and be awake and enlightened, takes you out of states. It takes you out of all states. So it's not a state change. It's not from one state to another. It's not like the cha-cha. It's literally like you go from being on this planet to being on the actual planet that we're on, which is invisible to us. There's there's literally an invisible astral, one might say, planet right here. And you're either on it or you're not. And it's kind of like being in the Matrix or not. It's that simple. So if you want that, I would skip the drugs personally, because the drugs actually give you the lie effect. They make you feel like you got it. They make you feel like you did it. But then when you come back, you've got even more work to do. You're like, it would be like trying to hike some kind of crazy trail, but taking a drug that makes you think you've reached the top. But every time you come off the drug, you're like 10 feet lower than you were. That's the truth of it. So it's a mirage, right? It's like, it really gives you the sensation. So yeah, listen, if you want to feel like you've never had, like the last question, Want to feel like your sex life is perfect? You've never even had a fucking problem? Snort some coke and fuck someone. Like, you will be the best person in bed. But if you want to try to actually unravel what it means to really confront your intimacy fears, that ain't no fucking drug. There's no drug for that, you know?
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. 2 more questions in this part of this colorful round here. What do you currently wrestle with?
Wrestle?
Yeah.
I wrestle with being seen as, like, I was raised by this awakened shaman. And so, like, he didn't care about money and didn't care about prestige or fame or any of these things. I really, really care about all those things. I do. And it took me a lot of courage to even open up about that years ago. So I'm past that point, but I still think I feel like I'm going to get busted or caught somehow. So I do wrestle with, like, how to manage my ego around that, like how to allow people to see fully, but at the same time, like, that balance, right? Like, of acting like I'm so fucking cool, but then at the same time being like, oh, like, I still want more, you know? I don't know.
That's so real.
Is that real?
Yeah, it's so real, and it's so relatable. So thank you for sharing that. Sure. And then the last question is a fun one. You've experienced a lot in your life. You've tried a lot. I'm curious to know, what are you really curious to experience that you haven't currently tried or experienced in your life so far?
Do you mean like activities or like visions? Or
I think both. I kind of wanted to, what are you really curious about?
Yeah. What am I curious about? Oh my God. One thing I'm really curious about. So, like, last year I had this thing happen where I had this huge opportunity where I was going to, like, perform and guide at, like, Madison Square Garden. And, like, 3 weeks before it happened, they canceled me. And I was like, I was in an altered state of consciousness when it happened. And so I was able to, like, have this almost like LSD like state where I wasn't upset at all about the thing. And I, like, emailed the person and was like, I just want to thank you, because the fact that this great of a loss for me, like, this was such a dream of mine, and that you're canceling me is evidence that I'm moving in the right direction. And I just feel so grateful that you, like, this moment will be with me forever. And I just want to thank you for gifting me the experience of this much pain so that I can even more, like, remember this when I do end up in Madison Square Garden.
Wow. Wow. That is, a very evolved response to be able to get to that point.
But it was real. Like, it wasn't like I was, like, texting my mentor and being like, what should I say now? Like, I was, like, literally in that state, and I was floating around. I was here in Venice, actually, and I was just floating around Venice. There was fog everywhere. Not like one evening, but that state went on for days and days where I was just so high.
Yeah.
And so I guess...
utter acceptance, it sounds like. Trust, faith, acceptance.
Yeah, well, I think I was on the altered planet, right? I was on the other planet. There is a planet here that you can be on, which I call the soul. And it's like, you're either on it or you're not on it. And when you're not on it, an email like that's going to fuck you up. Like, it's just gonna, and I get fucked up by emails all the time. But to answer your question, like, one thing I really am looking forward to experiencing is dying, right? Like death one day, and feeling that way about it. Like, just being like, oh, yes, like, give me this death. And because I think I've suffered so much loss and so much death in my life, I've always been afraid that death is scary or death is bad. And I'm very afraid of death. And so I just would love that experience. That's one experience, a conscious death.
Cool. I have loved every one of your answers. So, bummed to have to wrap this up, but just a few final closing questions. What can we do to support you, Biet?
Well, I'd love it if you got the book. And if you have, like, a group, or if you have a place to get more books, get extra books. And, Amazon is a great place to get them, so that I can become number one, because it matters a lot to me.
I appreciate your honesty.
And another, follow me on Instagram. I'm guided by Biet. So that's a good thing to do, but just indulge in the book, like, really get the book and read it.
That's where the juice is, actually doing the work and the exercises.
Yeah. I mean, if you read the book, like, you'll feel good for 3 days. It's like Coke. But if you do the actual work in the book, like, your life will completely change.
Boom. Well, you heard it right there. And then what final words of wisdom, encouragement do you have for listeners of the show today to live a bold, fulfilling, authentic life?
I would just say that you're in pain because you're human. And so what a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous experience. I wouldn't ever want to take it from you. And I would say, take that pain, bite into it, suck the marrow right out of it, and then take the superhero power that it gives you and then go go create some shit in the world. And you know what you're trying to create. Like, we all fucking know. And stop denying that you want to do it. Stop denying that it matters. You matter. And go fucking do it. But you're gonna have to bite into that pain. Stop turning away from the pain and running in the other direction. Face it, suck on it, and fucking get after it. It's yours for a reason. I'm not special because I had all that fucking shit happen to me. Everyone who's listening to this has had a nice fucked up dose. Maybe it doesn't look as good on paper, but they're fucked up because they're human. So I just know you. I know you. I know your number. If you're human, we're good,
Love it. True mic drop right there. The one and only Biet Simkin Glass. This has been a true treat and an honor, a year and a half in the making, and I'm so excited for you and your book.